All right, how is it going, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to the Metal Blade Live series. I'm your host, Riley McShane from Allegion, and I'm here with my good bud, Trevor from Black Dahlia Murder. How you doing, man?
Hey, dude, pretty well, man. Just
Hell
sitting here
yeah,
growing mushrooms on my back.
dude. Aren't we all? Aren't we all? God, this no touring thing is, going a little stir crazy here.
Yeah, for sure, man. I was doing pretty well with it for a while, and then I had to meet with my psychiatrist to get my Prozac re-upped, which is like something we have to do every 90 days or whatever. And we did it via Zoom, not unlike this. And he was like, "Yeah, so this is going to go on for at least another year, as far as I can see." And hearing somebody of status say that to me, wow, wow,
Ugh.
that really took the wind out of my sails, man.
Yeah, for sure. I think that there was there was like what was it? It was some kind of who who was it? Well, I was the Warp Tour guy who was like, oh, yeah, concerts 2022, and I was just like, fucking
Oh
sick,
yeah, those
man.
headlines hurt me too, man. I definitely noticed those ones where it's like some expert in the field,
Yeah,
says
which
we're really fucked for.
yeah. Well, here's to recording music and playing video games, right? That's
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's pretty much what I've been doing. I don't have a whole lot of experience recording myself, but I've been kind of like diving into Reaper during this whole time, and I've done a few different guest spots and appearances and shit like that, and it's been fun. Definitely good distraction.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and video games, of course. I need to get back on Twitch, man. It's time. It's time for the big return.
Yeah,
Ready to
dude.
come
I
back, and I think I'm gonna play Dragon Quest One. Pretty near and dear to my heart. So
it's such a good one, dude. I've been jamming some the newest one, 11.
oh
Uh,
yeah, that's great. I beat that one. That was good.
dude, it is so good. I'm only a few hours in, but that's what happens with me in RPGs. Is I'll get like 2 or 3 hours into it, and then something else will come along that I get excited for, and I'm like, I
Oh,
gotta
that's
do it.
me too. I'm the worst at finishing games. Like
Yeah.
I especially an RPG, dude. Well, at least that one, like it's easy because they help you keep tabs on what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like when you get back to it. Like some
Mm-hmm.
games, dude, say I'm playing a Super Nintendo game, put that down for too long, man. Start it back up again. You're like, I don't even know where the fuck I am or what
No
I'm doing.
idea. I'm a huge Super Nintendo RPG buff. Like beyond the Final Fantasy 3 and Chrono Trigger and Secret of Mana and like
Hmm.
the
Right.
mainstays. I'm super
Seven
big on like,
Saga, buddy.
dude,
Seven Saga.
so good.
Um, Lufia, those were
Yeah,
cool.
Lufia 2 is the one. The first one's good, but the Rise of the Sinistrals is the jam. And then the Breath of Fire
What else?
games I'm
Yeah,
super
those were
super
cool.
into.
Those are
But
pretty
yeah,
cool.
totally glad that RPGs have evolved with the times, and now we can open up a journal and be like, oh, this is what I was doing, instead of just being like, welp, I'm on the world map somewhere near this town.
Yeah, I like how they show you your footsteps too, like for a while on the map, in
Yeah.
a lot of games like now. So that helps.
I'm gonna break the fourth wall here real quick and shatter the fantasy of perfection. But I'm getting some volume comments. Will you turn yourself up just a little bit more,
Oh
bud?
yeah, yep, you got it. Hey, 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 hey.
There we go. That's what I like to hear. Anyway, cool. So obviously, outside of writing music, we've all been listening to tons of music. What have you been listening to? I know you do your obituarist thing, so it's pretty regular knowledge that you are a music buff and all things underground. But what's been tickling you the past couple days?
The new Spirit Possession album. They're from California. It's a guitar player that's in that band Ulthar as well.
Sick.
But it's black metal, sort of in that mayhem vein, but a little bit of a black thrash aspect to it too.
That's rad.
And it's nothing groundbreaking or anything, but it just sounds so damn good. It's so like energized and fresh sounding, and
Dude, I am such a huge advocate for styles of metal that are like traditionally not well produced getting the like modern day treatment. um, because when I hear like super sick black metal stuff or super sick thrash stuff, like with a little bit more modern production, instead of trying to like recapture the kind of like 90s vibe of like, you know,
Right.
lo-fi kind of stuff,
Uh-huh.
it just fucking gets me, man. I love it. It's I
Right.
don't
I
know.
would I would put this at about that middle ground, you know, like it's still pretty raw and real.
Right.
But dude, like in the last few years, man, my tastes have gone to like there'll be weeks where I just like black metal that sounds like it was recorded like over a phone on a fucking 4 track and like terribly played on purpose, so it sounds like the people that are playing it like are lepers. Yeah,
Yeah.
like
just
they can barely do it because they're like diseased,
just have
and just the whole
no fingers falling off
right.
during recording. Yeah.
And the whole like everything about it is terrible. Like it's just like terrible on purpose, and it makes you feel terrible. And it's just like I don't know. Like I definitely go for like usually about a week. I'll be on one kind of tear. You know, like I'll be all brutal death metal for a week, and then I'll order a ton of albums. They won't even get to me in time to the when I've switched to the next phase. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, the last while it's been big black metal. Like I want to say like the last year or so, I've been way more towards black metal. I think for doing the column, I was deep diving brutal death so hard for a while,
Yeah.
and it seems like I don't know, like the amount of quality brutal death releases have slowed down a little bit over the last couple of years, I think,
Yeah.
but. There's still amazing shit coming out. The new Devangelic was awesome. The new Defeated Sanity is dropping right now, and that's probably my album of the year right now. But that Spirit Possession is nipping on the heels, man. That's pretty fucking wild. So
That's awesome.
but yeah, dude, and you know, I'm still definitely using this time to comb the annals of metal and find old and new stuff as always. You know, metal archives every single day.
Oh yeah.
I've considered getting a metal archives tattoo.
Just,
It's like my homepage, you know. I'm just like
Encyclopedia Metallum across your throat.
the most useful site, dude. I wish they would do that for like. I wish there was a hardcore version of that, you know, that had like every fucking.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that they turn away at the gate for sure.
Yeah. There's you know, like you can't be too gore grind or they won't put you up there.
Yeah.
You know, it's definitely they're definitely choosy.
My Metal Archives page has a band that I was in high school that I didn't actually like release any music with, but I don't know how it happened.
Somebody submitted you, dude. Somebody from the band that was like, "Yo, I want to be on the radar."
And I was like, "Oh my god!" So yeah, now it's like you've got, you know, fucking Allegiant, Continuum, Inanimate Existence, Virulent Depravity, Son of Aurelius, Darkness Enthralled high school band, and I'm just like, "What?"
Hey
the
man,
fuck
well,
is
you know,
this? Like...
most of your rap sheet is kick ass.
Yeah.
So I definitely don't want my high school band coming back to haunt me, or my like. I played guitar for a while when I got out of high school in a metalcore band that was kind of like Disembodied and Mourning Again, and I don't know. We weren't very good. I'm not a good guitar player. There's definitely a reason that I put the guitar down when I met the Black Dahlia guys. I was like, these fuckers are younger than me and shredding me into the ground. And, you know, that was just the beginning of BDM. It was way more, you know, tame than it is now. But yeah, dude, I don't want my bands coming back to haunt me. You know, we got a lot right. You know, like we were very enthusiastic. We worked hard. We practiced. We took it very seriously. We promoted ourselves, but we just weren't very good musicians at the end of the day.
Yeah,
you know,
I
everything
guess,
else was right.
I guess the bottom line does speak the loudest sometimes.
But nowadays, man, people are so talented while they're young, dude. You see, you know, like half the bands out there are like coming out of high school age and just like, you know, I think that there's just been a different standard since YouTube and like the Pro Tools era, and you know, dude, people are talented as fuck now, man.
Yeah,
there's a lot of shredders out there. It's crazy.
When I first joined Allegiant, our guitar player Michael Stansel was like 20, like he couldn't go out to bars with us on tour, and I was just like, bro, how are you playing this shit? Like, you are not old enough to rent a car, but you are like just
that's exactly why, you know, like... he was stuck at home and he knew what to do with his time. You know? like Brandon, our lead player, he just like coasted through school as that like super quiet, introvert dude, and just played guitar all motherfucking day.
Yep.
And that was his dream to like do something with it.
It
And
shows, man. We
that's wild, dude. It's wild. He's never been. And speaking of crappy local bands, he's never been in a local band.
that's a feat to behold, in my
Isn't
opinion.
that wild?
That
That's wild.
is
He
that is
worked so
crazy.
hard at his craft before like trying to branch out. Usually it's the other way around. Like for me in my early bands, like I said, we had every other aspect right. You know what I mean?
Yep.
We tried hard, we loved it, we were dedicated, we had a real brotherhood, but we were no good,
Yeah. uh, I speaking of Brandon, quick little side shoot. So before my time in Allegiant and Arsis toured together, who he used to play with, um, and they coined a term for his playing for his during his solos. They were like, "Man, you fucking lay down that fucking big dick vibrato, man. Like you just got it's just fucking just like you just get that fucking and so now big dick vibrato has just become a mainstay in our vernacular. I'm just like, man, that solo sounds good, but if you could just give it a little bit more of that BDV, just give it that.
Oh,
You know?
it's true, dude. I feel like that's like his most recognizable strong suit is that
Yeah, his vibrato is
wrenches the fuck out of those strings, man.
Yeah.
And some young kids, man, I think that were born of the generation like are not feeling it. Like, they're like, this dude is playing all this 80s dad shit, man. Like, what is
man. Come on. It's gotta shred. It's gotta shred. Well, speaking of old bands and other things that we've worked on, one of the questions I have here is side projects. Is there a side project or like a guest feature that you've done at any point in the past or recently that you like really particularly enjoyed? I know a lot of people have been drawn to the guest song you just did with Shadow of Intent. The Barren and Breathless Macrocosm came out great.
That was cool, but honestly, going into that one in particular, that was one of the situations where I was intimidated by the other vocalists I was being
Yeah.
on the track with, because the dude is just such a fucking monster, man,
Yeah,
and he's
Ben's
like got so much technique, and like that's not necessarily my strong suit. I think I'm more of a charismatic singer, I
yeah.
guess. I don't really know,
Yeah,
but
Ben's a freak of nature, man. That guy is I think
so
it
yeah.
all comes from his neck. You see pictures of him, and he's just like he's got that corpse grinder neck going
Oh,
on.
dude,
Where
for
I'm just
sure. He
like, oh
told me
man,
about how he just practiced headbanging like in high school and shit like that, and
yeah,
it's all paying off, dude.
those
But
low tones, those low
that was one
tones.
of those things. Another time, when I went on the Infant Annihilator track with Dickie, dude. Dickie's another
Yeah,
one of those guys that's like, one of the. He's got the new wave of vocal approaches, and he's super fucking good at it. Super disgusting lows, and then I'm just like, I don't know, just like a weird wet cat
yeah.
on the track. You know what I mean? So, things I've done lately that I've enjoyed. I did 2 songs for a black metal project during this. I just finished the second one recently. I like did an entirely different vocal approach from Black Dahlia Murder. I like threw out my rule book for Black Dahlia, where Black Dahlia, like I don't want to lay down a million vocal tracks, you know what I mean? So I can like reproduce it live, and I have certain voices that I'm kind of like expected to be doing, and this one was like totally like from the Mayhem playbook, or I would just sound like I was going for that Popeye Mayhem voice, where it's just like like sort of got that like throat singing vibe to it a little
Yep.
bit. And that was fun. I don't really know if I'm like allowed to give away too much info about this. I kind of would like the demo to trickle out without anyone knowing it's me. Maybe like the real black metal dudes will take it seriously then. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
right. Yeah.
So I kind of want that to happen, or I don't want to spill the beans without getting the rest of the band members' input. But it was really fun to do, man. Really awesome to do something different. I've had fun doing the appearances for the Slay at Home festival that Frank from Metal Injection curated.
Yep.
First, I was asked to sing on a song, a Sepultura cover. That was really fun. A song from Arise. And it was like Brody from Rivers of Nile. Your boy Greg was on there.
Yeah.
that was really fun. And then Frank hit me up again, was like, dude, what about Cannibal Corpse, The Pickaxe Murders? And I was like, well, you really couldn't have picked a more perfect song, and I can't really
Yeah.
say no to that. And so that was really fun. I mean, that record, The Bleeding, is like one of my Bibles, man, and had a huge effect on what I would do with Black Dahlia Murders. So it was really fun to sing that, and it was like an honor to be on a track with the bass player from Suicidal, who's incredible, drummer from Megadeth, Dirk.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, that was a treat, definitely. And yeah, lots of people are hitting me up lately. You know, everyone is kind of doing their own home recording thing. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
so it's
I'm right
nice.
there
It's
with you.
cool. It's cool to have something to do. I'm definitely glad to have taken the jump. It's doing this a little bit. You know, I'm still got a long way to go with my Reaper knowledge, but I could get it done.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been watching a bunch of like YouTube videos on how to mix vocals for pop production and how to like
Uh,
create like a side chain in Ableton that has like I can just go into my audio effects rack and like pull it down and be like, "Oh, it's the magic fucking sound gooder. Like this
right.
is
Yeah, it
great."
has all your comps and shit ready to go.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah,
So,
see, I'm still like a super novice at dialing in the comps and stuff like that. I have like a Acme one that I use. I've been using an Acme compressor live, actually. I bought it to use in the studio because I've used it on the last few BDM records and I really liked it. It has a tube in it, so like now I'm carrying around this fragile
this little
piece of equipment.
delicate box.
Yeah, I'm not used to having equipment, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
aside from like a mic and shit like that. So there's been a few times where I've almost left it behind and shit. But
Yeah.
yeah, if you like, we did that live in Boston stream kind of recently that our sound guy Marshall mixed down afterwards, and yeah, you can hear like it's the exact fucking compressor and preamp that I used on the last few records. You know, it has that same exact like crunchiness to it, the same kind of heat, and like I don't really see a lot of dudes in metal using a compressor live or using a preamp. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's kind of like, well, it's in a 500 rack. You know what I mean? It's portable, and I don't know. It just sounded so good. Sounded so hot, and like really colored up the vocals. And you know, like I feel like my vocals kind of thin. You know, like the high ones. So like I don't know. It's definitely like beefed it up and given it a lot of character. And you know, so I don't know
Yeah.
if people would frown upon that. You know, that I'm I'm using effects, man. You know.
It's not 100% raw, you know, straight into an SM58. Like it's, yeah, you know. Well, what are you gonna do? I mean, I'm a huge advocate for live treatment. It's just you know what I want to do when I go and I perform. I want to leave an impression on people that they're like, oh wow, that sounded really good. Um, and oftentimes, it's the kind of thing where it's like vocals. I feel like get a little bit more of the criticism for not being 100% raw, like like backing tracks and all that kind of stuff. Like whereas guitars and all the other instruments in the band, you have kick triggers, you have backing tracks for guitars, you have all this kind of stuff that comes along with a lot of modern metal bands. And so
Right.
for vocalists to kind of have to like take a backseat to all of that and be like, well, I'm glad you guys have your $3,000 Axe effects. I'm just gonna scream, raw into my 58 and hope that the guy on the soundboard makes me sound good. Is kind of silly to me. So I am all for having good live effects on your vocals.
It's been really cool. It's been really eye opening. I'm not like a studio guy. I'm not inclined in any way and that kind of thing. But yeah, it was a big jump in and yeah, the guy Acme is like a local Detroit thing. The guy that designed it, his name's Al. We recorded at his studio a couple times. Rust Belt. He's like produced some Kid Rock records and shit back in the day. He's
Hell
got like some
yeah.
gold records on the wall over there. But yeah, he's a cool guy and makes a cool line of products for sure.
That's awesome. Well, speaking of Detroit, that is so forgive my ignorance here, but so Detroit, is that where you are from, or is that just where you live, or
I live in Brooklyn now. I've been out
okay,
here. I'm coming up on a third year here. The band is based out of Detroit, which is basically like an easier way of just saying where we're from. We're not from Detroit proper.
Right.
Um, Basically, like nobody else knows the other towns of Michigan, so there's no point in trying to rep any of them. It
Yeah.
seems like to me was my, you know,
Yeah.
um, there's people that said we're from Waterford, Michigan, because I was living with my mom back then, and I put my mom's address in there just to get some, in case someone wanted to send mail or whatever.
Yeah.
And so like I see a lot of like I think Wikipedia has us coming from Waterford, Michigan, but I'm the only one that, lived out there. We did practice at my house briefly for a while during like when we were writing Unhollowed. I remember like writing certain songs down in my mom's basement. But yeah, Detroit, we have Brian Eschbach. He still lives there in Ferndale. Our drummer Alan lives there too. And then we have Brandon, who is in New Jersey. He's like an hour from me on the train. And Max is in Rhode Island. So we're largely East Coast
Right.
right now. But
That's
we get together for a few days before a tour kicks off. We'll meet in Michigan. And Brian's got a pretty sick setup in his house now. We moved out of our practice space, and we paid for Alan to get an entire like kit that's a replica of his normal kit, you know what I mean, which was not cheap, if you're gonna
yeah.
really get every fucking cymbal and every
Yeah.
drum and shit. So he has that set up, and yeah, so we've just been playing with digital drums and not quite as loud as we used to be, but
Right.
still loud. I found it like we were too quiet at first, and I couldn't scream as loud as I wanted to. You know what I mean? I felt like I was trying to hear the band,
Absolutely.
like kind of compromising myself. So I had to like have a talk with the guys. Like, I'm sorry, dude, but we got to turn way up.
Yeah. It's a different thing, man. A lot of I hear that from a lot of vocalists, myself included, that it's like, dude, when I'm live and I'm in like live sound, it's so much easier to just like cut loose and like really you get those super strong notes out versus like
Oh, for sure.
playing
For
in a
sure.
super quiet environment trying to scream. It's just like, oh man,
Right.
I don't know.
It's weird to like, I feel like my recording mode like is an entirely different mode. I never get into that like crazy fearless like adrenaline rush. Like I never get to be where I need to be when I'm
Yeah.
in the studio. It's hard to. It's hard. It's a whole different scenario. It sounds different. The hardest part is just like tapping into that energy you get when you have the band around you and you can feel your leg hair moving from bass on the stage, and you can feel the kicks in your heels, and um, you can see the band pushing air. You can see the band like destroying, and it helps your confidence. Like a
It
lot
really
of
does.
like, it's hard to do what we do without the guys right there, you know what I mean, kind of giving you that like mutual energy, you know what I mean.
Mhm.
So like the studio environment is really sterile. It's really fucking weird. um I mean, I've gotten way more used to it over the years. I mean, we've made 9 records now, but it's still not something I'm entirely like in love with or 100%
Yeah.
comfortable with.
The studio thing is like I always have to just have that shit cranked super loud. Like I always try to request like really really isolated headphones because it needs to be so loud in my head to like replicate that live feeling that
Right.
it's like for sure gonna bleed into
Oh,
into the microphone if
for
I
me,
don't.
like I have it up so loud that like I can hear my heart beating in my
Yeah.
fucking ears, you know?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a thing. The two different modes of metal vocals, the like really high energy adrenaline fueled one, and then the like pushing it out in the studio mode, which is something that like I said, I don't think a lot of people really realize it. I think that it's like it takes a certain type of vocalist to be able to do both, like on an equal playing field, on a totally level playing field. But
I would imagine it's hard for most of us, you know what I
oh
mean?
yeah.
Like it's just such a different environment, and um part of it is like doing it in front of a stranger out of nowhere, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, and so we definitely sidestepped that, at least with this record, by tracking with Brandon at his place. So somebody I'm very comfortable with, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely it's a different world on stage, and you know it, I wish that like I don't know. I wish that you could cross it somehow. I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know what that would entail. I got to record live in the studio in front of people, or
Yeah, right.
or I don't
Get those
know what.
performance shoes on, just fucking yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
um so if you to backtrack a little bit, so if you could go back home today, other than, stopping in a world where everything is still open, other than stopping to see friends and family and stuff, if you could, like, what would be your first stop? Like, off the plane, like restaurant, record store, like where would you go in the Michigan scene?
Um, man, Ferndale is a cool spot. It's like a town right outside of Detroit. It's kind of where the punks and the hipsters have kind of gathered. It's like a miniature Brooklyn there, I would say.
Nice.
That's a cool spot. I like Danny's, the bar, this old Irish bar. That was kind of like my staple. It's just like a, hole in the wall shithole. But that's how
The
I like it. I
the
like I
best
like dive
places.
bars with like shitty wood on the walls and
Yeah.
stuff. And as far as food goes, man, Coney's, dude.
Coney's,
Coney's. I miss Coney's out here,
for
and pretty.
sure.
Um, you can find places that have chili cheese dogs and whatever. People think it's a really simple concept, but um, if you have a real ass Coney from one of the OG Coney spots in Detroit, it's fucking amazing, dude.
It's,
It's
it's a
a
whole different world, man. It
right,
is.
right. It's badass for sure, and I do miss that sometimes. I haven't found the Mexican food spot out here yet.
That's a
Where
rough
I was
one.
Right. Yeah, dude. I'm still looking for that, and there's just so many to sort through, dude. It's crazy.
And
But I mean, there is so much good food. You could eat like something great every day, never eat the same thing twice.
yeah,
You can go around the world in 40 steps here, So
yeah,
it's
seriously.
a big change from suburban Michigan and being kind of like landlocked with a bunch of chilies and
Yeah.
shit like that. That's where I was, you know what I mean? Like
Ugh.
when I lived in Michigan anyway. But yeah, I miss venues have changed a lot since I've been out there. Now they're doing the Sanctuary in Hamtramck, Michigan. I think that's kind of like the spot now.
Yeah.
Haven't been out there for a show, but it looks awesome. Um, definitely would go there. I liked the shows in Michigan for sure. They just weren't as many. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It being a peninsula, it's kind of got that like Florida curse too, where people don't want to
Yeah.
come in because you got to go back out the same fucking way,
Yeah.
So a lot of times it's just Cleveland, Chicago, skip
Yeah.
Michigan.
Every time I've played in Michigan, it's always been in like the Detroit area, and the first time I played there was Harpo's, which is
Oh,
yeah, yeah, big oof. It was a super sick show that it was like a crossover tour. So it was in 2010, and it was Cattle Decapitation and Devourment were headlining the bill that we were on.
oh, I was there.
Yeah, you were at that
Yep,
show, and then
yep.
who? It was like another tour. It was like, I want to say, like Through the Eyes of the Dead and Flesh God Apocalypse, and it
Yeah, it
was
was a
Suffocation
stacked
and the
dual
Faceless, I think,
bill.
played. Yeah, it was a big old tour collision bill, and it was super fun because of that. But it was also Harpo's, so it was a little seedy. I was just like,
Right.
oh man.
Dude, I've gone to Harpo so many times, and every time I go there, like while I'm there, I'm like, fuck, this sucks.
Yeah.
It sounds like shit. I hate coming here. I'm
Yeah.
never coming back. And then someone will come through and it's like their only date and they've never been there. And I'm like, all right, here I am going to fucking Harpo's
Fucking
again.
Harpo's here.
Just
Here you
repeats all
go.
over again. I get mad all over
Yeah.
again. And I'm glad that now people know about St. Andrews and the Stick, and
Yeah.
that there's more prominent venues that are like actually sick that like represent Detroit better now than
Yeah.
Harpo's.
Well, Harpo's has that whiskey a go go thing going for it, right? Where it's like a legendary venue, like all these huge acts from like the '60s played there, but now it's like not really quite like that anymore.
Right. And there's like, artifacts from those times all over the walls and
Yeah.
stuff. And like, I don't know if you've ever been to the IROC.
No.
But the IROC is like it's a small place like on the same strip as Harpo's. So it's like kind of scary over there too. But this club is like frozen in time, man. Like the guys that work there have like straight across Manowar bangs, and like the bathrooms have like Budweiser chicks all over them. You know what
Oh
I mean?
man.
And like, you know, like set lists from Megadeth from 1985 when they played there and shit. And it's
Oh
just like
yeah.
frozen in time, dude.
That's
Like
amazing.
it's one of those places that announces the band in between, you know?
Hell yeah. You
Like
know,
it's
there's a charm to those places. Yeah, like it's got this. It almost feels like you're playing at a strip club, like when that
yeah, I was gonna
happens.
say very strip
Like-
clubby vibe when they do the announcement, you
and
know.
now, welcome to stage, the Black Dahlia murder. Yeah, that kind of
Up
shit going on.
next, Cookie.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, we've been running here for about 35 minutes. I don't want to keep you too long. So I've got a couple of questions left. One real quick one that I think we're going to start asking all of our guests on this thing. So Metal Blade started with the Metal Massacre compilation way back in the 80s. If you were to curate the Metal Massacre today, which band would absolutely have to be on it?
Ooh, that's tough, man. Malignant Altar, maybe.
Sick.
I feel like they're about to be a huge fucking band. They have their LP coming down the pipes, and I mean they're not unsigned. They're on Maggot Stomp, but I just think that they're one of those bands that's just gonna like take the fuck over in the next while. Um, but yeah, a lot of the bands in that scene kind of surrounding Maggot Stomp, I think, are really cool. Um, Mortal Wound is awesome. Um, Frozen Soul, they just upgraded though. They got signed to Century Media.
Nice.
Frozen Soul, they got the upgrade. But yeah, and like not just the bands that are on Maggot Stomp, but there's a lot of bands kind of surrounding that scene. You have Undeath, they just got picked up
Undeath is fucking sick.
by Prosthetic. I did a vocal thing for them a while back. That was fun. Um, that was deceivingly the easiest and hardest vocal
Yeah.
appearance because it's only one line.
Right.
You know what I mean? But
Right.
like it repeats, and I know I just had to make sure it was perfect. So I did like 8 zillion takes. But...
Those repeating line ones are tough, man, because it's like you don't want to just give the same delivery every time, right? So it's like
right, and you don't want to cut and paste it, you know, and
yeah.
make it not genuine, you know.
Mhm.
But anyway, back to Metal Massacre. Demon Bitch from Detroit. I think that band like embodies the sound of the old Metal Massacre even.
Yeah.
Like it has a sort of lo-fi kind of you know, local band sound, like not in a good way, you know, like a homegrown organic kind of sound, very, you know, soaring vocals and shit like that.
Totally.
Temple of Void, I would put on there, another Detroit band. I think that they're like the new kings on the rise of doom death metal.
Yeah, they've definitely been popping up in my social medias a lot lately.
Yeah, dude. I mean, they dropped the third record. They're making waves and you know, getting attention from kind of the old guard of the genre and stuff. So that's very cool. What else? There's a cool black metal band from New Jersey that's like pretty unknown, called Worthless.
Okay.
They dropped a new full length this year. I'm not even sure who puts them out. It's a very, very small label. I think they would be good for it. It's sort of in that lane of like Deathspell Omega and the kind of like dissonant era of black metal. You know, there's been a lot of that coming down the pipes the last few years, but definitely a sound that I enjoy, and definitely a cool band. But yeah, dude, it's amazing. That's just one of those testaments to like what Brian was able to do, man. Like starting with that little comp and like having the first fucking metal zine in America, period. You know, and like just taking that and just like all the way to today. It's been such a amazing journey for him. You know, it's unreal. Dude.
When Brian Slagle autobiography documentary, that's what I want. I want it so
yeah,
bad.
that would be tight. That would be really
a good
tight.
One. Cool. Well, I've got a couple questions from the fans before we log off some of the people who have been watching. First question comes from username Powder Keg. How big of an influence was Suffo on Black Dahlia Murder?
Big one, definitely. Definitely in the vocal approach for the more of like the low vocal. There's definitely been times and riffs where we're like, yo, this is the Suffo part,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And sort of like the neoclassical swagger that Terrence has with what he writes too
Yep.
has definitely like been a sort of similar thread to what we do in Black Dahlia. It Pierce from Within was literally my first death metal record that I ever purchased, you know, and
God, what a good place to start.
I
Fuck.
know it
Ugh.
might. I think it's still my favorite, and yeah. In a way, it's kind of like a catch-22 because you know if you're starting with an album that's so good, you know, uh, but also like I remember like the first few times listening to it, it just sounded like it was so complex, and I thought like, how am I ever gonna understand this? You
Yeah.
know, like,
Dude, there's still
but
some riffs on there that I like find myself being like, what like wait a second. Like, oh man.
that's my appeal. Like with those kind of bands is like um and brutal death metal that kind of came down that pipe like modeled after Suffocation, just the labyrinth of riffs
Oh
that
yeah.
you have to decode, like you know, Disgorge has that same appeal for me where I'm just like I get high, strap on the headphones, and like try to keep up with the maze of riffs, you know.
Yeah, that's how I was. One of the very first like tech death records that I got was Cabinet from Spawn of Possession, and
Hmm.
you know it comes in super strong with I want to say Lash by Lash is the first like song on there. It's like got the intro and then it does the
Hmm.
and then the next song after that, which I cannot remember the name for to save my life, but it starts off with this just fucking insane passage that's just like so all over the place, and it like kind of comes together, and there's this little like head bobby part in the middle that's just like and then just goes back to being completely fucking insane, and it's like it's just so much fun to listen to that kind of stuff and just be like, oh my god, like because you get this like replayability out of it almost, right, where it's like
Oh,
the
for
first
sure, you
time is
gotta
you know
do things that like will challenge the listener, you know.
oh
So
yeah,
like if there's one major takeaway from Suffolk, like that's it, that
yeah,
I think is applied to BDM, is to like do something crazy that happens once that's like going to dazzle people, you know what I
totally.
mean? And to really to not be straightforward, you know, like to purposely be weird and inject like sideways kind of riffage here and there, and like that's definitely something that's been learned from Suffolk.
Totally. um Nick Nelson asks, when touring continues, are there any up and comers you want to bring on? Um, I know that, well, let me, I guess, preface this question by saying that a lot of the times, you know, tours aren't really constructed that way. It's kind of like, hey, like, here's this band. Do you guys want to, like, go out with them? And it's like, yeah, sure. But even when you're in a headlining position, you know, usually you get to construct your own tours. So, keeping that in mind, Mr. Nick Nelson, uh, Trevor, are there any bands that you would want to see touring with Black Dahlia?
Oh, there's tons, man. There's tons.
Yeah.
I'd still like to take Horrendous out. We tried to hit them up before, it just didn't pan out. Again, back to a lot of the Maggot Stomp bands. I think they would be good opening bands. Sanguisugabog, for example,
Oh,
has a lot of heat right now.
super
Cool
sick band.
band. We were supposed to play some shows with them, like in between the Testament dates before you know Armageddon popped off.
Yeah.
But I'd like to play with them. We played a show with Uwada. That was cool. I'd like to see more of them. That was fun.
Also a
Um,
great band.
what else? Ulthar, also cool. That new record's really awesome. I haven't seen those guys live yet, but I mean, they have like a ton of fucking steam. You know, they'd be definitely cool on the right bill.
Yeah.
And dude, you're so right about assembling tours. Though, like basically every Black Dahlia Murder tour, you've seen the end result. You've seen like version Z of the lineup.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
so much give and take and push and pull and so many egos and so little money to go around. And dude, it's such a fucking complex process, like assembling a tour,
Yeah.
and it almost never comes out as planned. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
It's
And you know, there are times where I'm more in control of who we're touring with, and it'll be more to my taste. And then there'll be times where we'll do something on the other end. You know what I mean? Where it's just like realizing what fans of Black Dahlia Murder like. You know what I mean? It's not always the same shit that I like. You know,
right.
there's certain crossover, but it's kind of like you got to step back and realize what your band is, what your band is seen as and perceived as, and kind of like play to those strengths. That's kind of what we've been doing.
Totally, totally. And then last question before we sign off here. Preston Hart wants to know. He says, I love your vocals. How can I learn to sing like you or in a death metal voice? Which is also an extremely loaded question as another vocalist
Oh,
here.
for sure, for sure. Like I've been in a few situations where I was, supposed to do like an interview where I explain my technique and stuff, and I find it very, very hard to communicate what I do and very hard to verbalize what I do.
Yeah.
It's just something that's really evolved over time from like not knowing shit in the beginning to like, I mean, I picked up a good bit from Melissa Cross's DVD, The Zen of Screaming, and the most important takeaway from that was like the breathing process and like how to keep a reserve in your diaphragm a little bit, so you can kind of get that rapid fire thing going. And
Absolutely.
that definitely helped with like increasing the amount of syllables I could pump out at a rapid rate. And but really, I think it, we talked about this before. I think it starts with like emulating the person that you like, or like, find some people that you like their vocals and try to emulate them, in your bedroom. And that's kind of like the beginning of it, man. That's kind of where we all started. And, now there's so many resources online for learning how to do different techniques. So you could go down a more educated road than I did for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would recommend, um, maybe pick a certain era, a certain record, of the guy you like, and try to emulate that, and start there. Um, you may not ever completely land on the guy that you're trying to emulate. You know what I mean? Like for me, the beginning was trying to sound like Bill and Jeff from Carcass. They had the kind of like high and low interplay, and yeah, I just really liked that sound and the whole like death metal harmony, with a high vocal and a low vocal layered like that. That just really struck me as being something kind of powerful and really like sick sounding. So I was definitely carried away with doing that in the early days. I did that a lot of layering and a lot of stuff I couldn't like recreate live. You know what I mean? And some of it I would pawn off on Brian, and he's still kind of backing me up to this day on a lot of different parts where, we'll kind of recreate that. But yeah, man, I would say definitely, sing along in your bedroom with some records. I would say get a mic set up, dude, and use a mic, not just screaming into your hand or something, but learn how you sound through a mic, learn how you sound, get used to that. I mean, that's going to be the end product, um, yeah, definitely look into Zen of Screaming. You could, start on a way more, educated path than I did, definitely recommend that. The first few years of Black Dahlia, I was just winging it, man. Especially in the early days, I would get up there, have an adrenaline rush, and just like freak out, flop all over the stage, and I would be completely wiped out, by the end of the first song. And yeah, like, it might surprise people to know that like, you and I are completely calm while we're up on stage.
Oh yeah.
And like thinking about what we're doing, and we're like just in this zone of like complete like calm. And you have to be, you know what I mean? Like you can't just go up there and be a wild animal. Like it doesn't.
I mean,
maybe in a certain punk band you could, you know what I mean? But like for what we're
totally.
doing, it's a real exercise. It's what we do is really, it's fucking Olympic, dude. You know what I mean?
Man.
To do an entire set. And so yeah, man, I think that, find the guy you like, try to emulate it the best you can, but don't be afraid to sound like yourself either. You'll hopefully land on something that you like in time. You can never just sing well the first day you try. There's no fucking way. Like it's a real process of like kind of weathering your voice, kind of it's like getting sort of a callus in your voice, figuratively, I guess.
Yeah.
And like if I take an extended break, coming back to it like is like kind of getting re-caught up, you know what I mean? Like I have to like take a few days to really break myself back into it. And so it's something you have to upkeep for sure if you want to just be able to do it on the drop of a dime, like daily upkeep for sure. Like now I've just kind of totally fallen off on that since like my world has you know, like not knowing when this is going to end, like in a way it's been kind of freeing because I've been on a schedule since 2003. Like I knew what I was going to do every moment of every, you know, since 2003 when we first took off on tour. And now like I don't know when this is going to end, so it's kind of like a weird indefinite vacation in a way.
Yeah.
You know, like if you're trying to look at the positive, you know, like I needed some time off to
Yeah.
decompress. More
Yeah.
so than I ever fucking realized, you know. So I'm
That's
definitely
definitely. Oh, go ahead.
getting refreshed, you know, in a way that I didn't know that I needed. And like, you know, the band just has too much pride. I don't think we ever would have fucking willingly stopped, you know. So as long as the rest of the world can't play either, you know, I'm kind of taking this moment for what it is and, you know, trying to enjoy it a little bit.
Yeah, that's definitely been a big takeaway from a lot of the other musicians that I've spoken to during this time is that it's like, man, like this industry's hard. You know what I mean? Like it's fucking hard work, and but it's the kind of thing that's like you can't stop. You can't, you know, it takes so much more work to gain momentum than it does to lose momentum. That if you stop even for just a couple months, it can be, you know, undoing like years of hard work. So
For sure. That's kind of the thing that has me feeling trepidation about this is that, you know, like, are we gonna completely lose the momentum from the new record like, entirely by the time we're able to go out and play it? You know what I
right.
mean? Or like, is it gonna build more anticipation? Or you know, I don't know. It's
I
kind of hard to say.
I think definitely the latter. I think that it's going to be one of those things where it's like by the time shows come back, people are going to be so fucking stoked that like it doesn't matter what you're playing. You know what I mean? Like, and if it is
That's
stuff
my
they've never
hope,
seen
dude.
live, then hopefully they'll be like that much more stoked that they're like, oh my god, I get to see Black Dahlia again after a year, and they're playing new shit that I haven't, you know, new shit that I haven't heard them play live yet because, you know, the last tour that I was going to go see had to get canceled because of COVID or whatever. So I think that I'm very hopeful for the state of the touring industry when it comes back. Um,
Mhm. I'm apprehensive about what form it's gonna come back in. Like, you
yeah,
know,
for sure.
like neutered capacities and you know like mandated social distancing in the shows and stuff like that frontier might be weird. And you know, is a tour going to be like playing the same city 3 nights in a row,
Right,
like every city, you
right.
know, and like at a small venue, or like you know, what is the new face of touring going to look like, you know?
Yeah, that's, you know, all valid questions, all valid questions, and I guess we'll just have to cross that bridge when we get there. Okay, so I know I said last question, but one person, Cipher Machinations, wants to know a quick one. Who's your favorite Ninja Turtle?
um Man, like my first thought was Leonardo, but like I feel like that's a betrayal on what I would have said as a kid. Like now I don't know. I'm like, yeah, he's level headed, you know, like
Yeah.
he's like like it's not the same like attributes that you admire when you're a kid, you know what I mean? Like for when I was a kid, I'm pretty sure it was like Michelangelo across the board, you
Oh
know.
yeah. Yeah.
Party animal. He's got the jokes, you know, he eats a lot of pizza. But now I'm like, yeah, you know, I think that Leonardo, you know, he's got the most longevity, you know, like
He's a
he's
leader, born
yeah.
leader, born. I'm a Donatello guy. I've always been a Donatello guy. He's the nerd. You know, he's the nerd of the group.
Yeah, he's the nerd.
I identify
I
with that shit.
I definitely like his like machinist capabilities, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? I think that's very cool. Definite an attribute. And pretty much any video game, he's the go-to because
He's the
he's got
one.
the
He's got the reach. Yeah.
yeah,
I was gonna
dude.
say Turtles in Time. Donatello is the way to go. He's got that fucking spinning move that just wrecks shop. Well, I've kept you long enough. Thank you so much, man, for coming and talking. It's been super fun. For those of you who have been living under a rock for the past almost 20 years, this is Trevor from Black Dahlia Murder. Great dude. Follow him everywhere you can. All of his socials are listed just below us here in this little window that you have been watching. I am Riley McShane from Allegiant. This has been the Metal Blade Live series, and we will see you all again next Wednesday.